Channel's Week in Review. Why the new Israeli government is making waves, Tony Awards nominations, and more of the Jewish news that's changing your world right now in this episode of the Week in Review. Hello and welcome to the Jewish Channel's Week in Review. I'm Stephen I. Weiss. The man who is responsible for negotiations with Palestinians under the new Israeli government said in a speech to his political party, "We are all against the Palestinian state. There is no question about it." Silvan Shalom is Deputy Prime Minister and Interior Minister, and now Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has appointed him as Israel's chief negotiator. This comes as Shalom has a record of making statements that many would say question or actively argue against the two-state solution. In his most recent position as Minister of National Infrastructure, Shalom blocked the water supply to a Palestinian town in the West Bank even after the Defense Ministry had approved supplying water to the town. The appointment of Shalom caps several weeks of appointment announcements from the Netanyahu government, including several appointments of far-right politicians that have raised eyebrows around the globe. Among them is new Justice Minister Ayelet Shaked, who previously made international headlines last year when she posted an old article to Facebook that she declared, quote, as relevant today as it was at the time. The article she was citing as relevant was seen by many as a call for genocide. It declared in its opening paragraph, quote, "This is a war between two people. Who is the enemy? The Palestinian people." The article went on to say in its second paragraph that, quote, "In wars, the enemy is usually an entire people, including its elderly and its women, its cities and its villages, its property and its infrastructure." President Barack Obama responded to the formation of the new Israeli government at a press conference this week.
I continue to believe that a two-state solution is absolutely vital for not only peace between Israelis and Palestinians, but for the long-term security of Israel as a democratic and Jewish state. I know that a government has been formed that contains some folks who don't necessarily believe in that premise, but that continues to be my premise. And since we're up here at Camp David, I think it's important to remind ourselves of the degree to which a very hard peace deal that required incredible vision and courage and tough choices resulted in what's now been a lasting peace between countries that used to be sworn enemies. And Israel's better off for it. I think the same would be true if we get a peace deal between Israelis and Palestinians. That prospect seems distant now, but I think it's always important for us to keep in mind what's right and what's possible.
Meantime, Netanyahu has also made appointments in response to concerns about racism, discrimination, and police brutality targeting so-called Ethiopian Jews in Israel. On Monday, he announced a special committee focused on their integration. In his remarks announcing the special committee, Netanyahu declared, quote, "There is no room for racism and discrimination in our society. We will fight with all our strength against these unacceptable practices. We will simply uproot them from our lives. We will turn them into something looked down upon, something contemptible." Moving on, nominations for the Tony Awards were revealed recently, and Meredith Gansman was there as part of our coverage for our theater show, Row J.
And now for this year's nominees.
To be nominated for a Tony Award is...
Oh my God! What is happening? It's crazy. Yeah, I don't know. How's it going? It's overwhelming. It's like magic.
It was just sort of just disbelief at first. I think my face kind of went numb, and I sort of just started I sort of started shaking, and I don't know if I was able to process it as a good thing at first. I sort of thought, what's happening?
Row J caught up with the nominees the morning after the nominations were announced.
I was in Jersey when I found out.
Oh my God.
At my parents' house with my Jewish parents.
Right. Were they just, kvelling, schwitzing?
Schwitzing, kvelling. I really thought that my dad was going to have a heart attack. I'm not kidding. The Jewish mother in me got scared for my dad's health.
Well, that's sweet.
Yeah, but no, yeah, they were kvelling.
All right, so how did you find out? I read this, but I'm going to let you tell us.
Okay, well, I was dead asleep. I honestly did not expect this at all.
Best Supporting Actor nominee for Something Rotten, Brad Oscar plays a soothsayer in the musical, but he didn't foresee a nomination for his performance.
I don't like to predict these things. No, I mean, of course, look, it was spinning in my, people say things to you, and I'm like, no, don't put a kind of her on it. But people do say things, so of course I thought, well, yes, it would be nice, and yes, here's an opportunity to originate a role that could be nominated when it comes down to all that. But as we know, at the end of the day, this is what it is, and our job is to go there 8 times a week and do what we are so lucky to be able to do with a show like this, and celebrate the American musical comedy, and go out there and make people laugh and have a good time. And
Something Rotten director Casey Nicholaw has created a love letter to musical theater.
So many of us at a certain age too, we feel like seeing that show and seeing that musical number is sort of like seeing our life flash before us. All the love we had for theater our whole lives, and how important it was to us, and the joy we found from it, and the joy we're still finding from it.
Best Actor nominee Alex Sharp made his professional and Broadway debut in The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime, playing a teen on the autism spectrum.
He's such an unusual and unique character, and I think it's important to have characters like that as the protagonists of unique and original works that are like it's the play is the way it's done, and the way we go inside of his brain is so such an original creative direction for a play to go in, and for that to be on Broadway is really exciting. And this character is just so complex, and it's just delicious to play.
Sometimes these Tony-nominated performances are more violent, though.
The puppet and I, we go at it, and I've broken my finger. This is real. This isn't just a story anymore. This is real life.
Boyer plays Jason, a teenager in a Christian puppet ministry whose puppet Tyrone has a mind of his own. And when Tyrone found out about the nomination, Boyer says he was less than animated.
Well, Tyrone was living in his apartment, which is a JanSport backpack, and he didn't say much.
Oh, is he humble?
No, I think he was probably just drunk. That's his kind of like his de facto state. He's just kind of.
For more from this year's Tony Award nominees, tune into the full broadcast version of the Week in Review.
Tony Awards telecast on Sunday, June 7th at 8 p.m. on CBS.
Thank you, Meredith. Finally, this week on Up Close, what does money mean to us? In our society, it's often much more than just a means to buy stuff. Sometimes money is the way we communicate values of who we are and how we pass those values on to the next generation. How do we get on the right side of those values? New York Times columnist Paul Sullivan attempts to answer those questions in The Thin Green Line, The Money Secrets of the Super Wealthy. And then, sometimes money is an instrument of the government and banks that makes us give up a level of control we're not comfortable with. Exploring new solutions to take those institutions out of the equation is Wall Street Journal columnist Michael Casey, who is co-author of The Age of Cryptocurrency, How Bitcoin and Digital Money Are Challenging the Global Economic Order. Here are some of the highlights from my interview with Paul Sullivan. So I want to start off actually with something you get to near the end of your book, which there's this visualization exercise with a tape measure of what are we doing with money, what are we saving for, what are we working so hard for? And this was one of the starkest visualizations I could possibly imagine.
I'm out in Manhattan, Kansas, which is where Kansas State University is, and they have this department of, the Department of Financial Planning, and within that they have this school that is sort of looking at the psychology of money, sort of all the baggage we have around money. And part of this is I'm talking to one of the professors, and he's saying, how long do you think you're going to live? And I said, I don't know. He says, when have your grandparents died? I tell him, he says, let's call it 85. I said, okay, fine, 85 is good. He takes the tape measure and he holds it up 85 inches, cuts it off. Okay, so now it's hanging there, and he says, how old are you now? At the time I was 39. And he goes to 39 inches and cuts it off. And he says, this is what's left. Now, in this exercise, I'm wired to all of these sensors that are telling me, sort of my heart rate, how my fingers are sweating. And as you can imagine, everything sort of spikes at that moment because it's this guttural reaction of, that's it. Like, that's all that's left.
And one of the lessons there is it stands to a degree in contrast with the better financial advice in the world and a lot of the financial advice in your book, which is that when you look at that 46 inches that's left, and you said, well, I hope to retire at 70 and at 15, and then there's 15 years left. And he said to you, are you sure you want to be saving all your money for the next, 30 years in order to only spend it, only travel, only do all these things that you plan to do in retirement with that last 15? Wouldn't you rather spread some of the joy in life throughout, the other 2/3?
In an ideal world, money is just a means of exchange. You have more of it, you have more choice of it. You have less of it, you don't have as many choices. That's it. But they talk about how we have these deep, deep associations with money. So in my case, it was money vigilance. And money vigilance comes from having some sort of, well, it comes from many things, but in my case, it came from a childhood in which there was a bit of want. There wasn't enough money to go around, and I also saw money causing problems, parents fighting over money. And so somebody who's vigilant about money is going to save, which is what I do. And the good side of that is you're probably not going to run out of money. You're not going to end up broke. But the bad side is that you're not going to have as much enjoyment as you should in life. And of course, there are other scripts.
Money is this projection of the way we feel about the world, the way we feel about things, the way we feel about ourselves, is how we treat ourselves with money and how we act around money. And sometimes a lot of our money problems aren't really money problems. They're just life problems.
The chapter I have on entitlement, it's essentially the chapter on do you give money to your kids. This is, for many people, this is a champagne problem, when we all wish we had so much left over that we're wondering, what do we give to our kids? But it comes down to a very basic premise. Nobody wants their kids to turn out to be entitled brats. And through that chapter, I talk about, sure, there could be people who stand to inherit $3 million, $30 million, $300 million, big sums of money. But there are also people who are equally entitled, and they may inherit $30,000, or their parents may be the biggest fish in the smallest pond of some, teeny tiny town somewhere. And entitlement is a great fear, but we think it's about money, but at the end of the day, it's about decisions and choices that the parents made. I mean, in some way, in that chapter, I talk about how I think people of more modest means are teaching their kids more valuable lessons about money.
You can see the full episode of Up Close on the Jewish Channel on cable. You can also listen to the full audio of Up Close as a podcast available on iTunes or in your favorite podcast player. That's all for this week. From all of us here at the Jewish Channel, be well. The Jewish Channel is available on cable. Time Warner Cable Channel 1640, IOWTM Channel 505, RCN Channel 268, Cox Cable Channel 1, Bright House Channel 330, Verizon Fios Channel 900, and on Comcast on the on-demand menu on premium channels. For more information, visit tjctv.com.